Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Driving Demand, How You Can Turn Your Prospects into Pipeline with usecure. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I am Hetty, I'm the Channel Marketing Manager here at usecure, and joining us we have Nahil, he's our CRO. Just a few housekeeping rules. If you have any questions, there is a chat box function that you can ask any questions in today. Feel free to pop anything in there as the presentation progresses, and we will be able to respond to you. So without any further ado, I will hand over to you, Nahil.
Perfect. Thank you, Hetty. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us on the session today. So to give a broad agenda to what we'll be covering today, the main topic about this session is to give you as an MSP guidance about how to prospect to your clients as effectively as possible. We have some really useful purpose-built functionality within usecure to help you to build the business case. So we'll go through some of those tools to help you to build your sales pipeline. We'll go through a framework that our partners have tried and tested and that we know helps to generate that client interest. We'll go through how to get started with the conversion widget, so how to capture prospects and generate that interest from day one. And then we'll go through some of the resources and a bit more of an action plan about how to get started. So we've created this session today with a few different type of organizations in mind. If you are currently running sales and marketing campaigns, then there will be hopefully some useful tips and tricks to get started or to evolve your outreach sort of efforts with what we have available. If you're a new partner or you're a partner that's looking to increase your conversions, maybe get started with more of a dedicated process for usecure. Again, hopefully that step-by-step guide will give you an actionable plan. And we're also looking at efficiencies here. We know that for MSPs in particular, time prospecting, time marketing is pretty thin on the ground. We want to be as efficient as possible with your time. So we will focus on some key efficiencies to try and build the business case and build that pipeline without meaning it's going to take an exponential amount of time for you and essentially cut into the returns you get. So before we go through some of our initiatives, some of our resources that we have available for you, it's important to set the scene about why traditional MSP sales break down. And I'm sure at least one or two of these points will resonate with each of you on the session today. A major issue when we look at trying to generate new business, when we look at trying to gather new clients, is cold outreach is really tough. Most organizations naturally want to increase their client base. Cold email is one of the easiest things to implement with minimal touch. What it means is that quite often our outreach, even if it is quite tailored, can get lost in the noise. A lot of emails go unread, a lot of follow-ups get no replies. So it's a big issue that we have. Email is something that we've always relied on and obviously tried to get the message out there as much as possible. At the same time, I think a lot of companies are struggling with response rates to their call to actions to try and generate those new prospects. So we probably need a bit more of a creative approach, a bit more of a value-led approach to try and get that engagement from them. What we also find, particularly when it comes to selling security, is one of the things a lot of partners struggle with is generating that urgency, is building on that initial hook and giving your clients a tangible point to work on, something that they can hook onto that shows them why they should act now. When it comes to security, a lot of us naturally can delay. A lot of us think unless an incident has occurred, then we're probably okay, or we can sort of keep things at a medium priority and focus on other, maybe more obviously pressing elements. What we want to do when it comes to prospecting is try to build that urgency. If we can generate a clear, personalized pain point, it then gets that motivation to act a lot more strongly than if we're not taking the time to identify that hook and build that urgency. Linked in with that, we then sometimes find that those demos don't convert. Quite often, it can be easy to fall into a trap of being too product-led and maybe not gaining enough momentum or insight when it comes to the knock-on impact. You know, are we building the picture for our clients to help them understand this is, yes, it's a tangible solution, but are we getting them to think about the knock-on impact, the true business benefits when it comes to security and efficiencies for having a human risk management solution in place? And what we often find then, sort of to tie all that together, is that sales cycles can often drag on. That interest can be delayed, other projects can come up. We end up in an infinite loop of general checkups, follow-ups, see if there's been any progress on it, but we've lost that momentum and we've lost that urgency. So what we want to do is essentially build a process that gets ahead of these problems. We look at the reasons why a lot of these prospects don't go forward, and if we can create a structured workflow that can guide them through a path, that can build that data, that can create that urgency, that can allow that momentum to build and keep the sales cycle as short as possible, all of a sudden then we're much more efficient in our processing and in our prospecting. So as a usecure partner, again, we have built purpose-built tools for MSPs designed to help you grow. We know a big challenge for partners is simply the time it can often take to prospect. Again, particularly when it comes to selling security. So we've tried to help you guys along. We tried to give you as many shortcuts as possible, where for your clients, they're still getting the granularity and the insight that they need. But for you as an MSP, it's as quick and efficient a process as we possibly can make it. So we'll go through these in a little bit more detail in terms of the recommended workflow as well. But as a usecure partner, you get access to our website widget. The idea behind that is we want to generate conversions from those that visit your website or from those that are part of your email outreach. If we can capture those inbound leads and give them an easy call to action, which gets them started on the workflow as quickly and efficiently as possible, all of a sudden our conversion on our outreach is going to increase. What we also have is breach reports in the system. So when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to human risk, a lot of companies struggle to find that motivation unless they see data specific on their end users. Again, it's easy to disregard generic stats. It's easy to have the impression that they don't necessarily apply to you. If we present our clients with specific data on their own circumstances, it turns it away from being generic industry relevant statistics to statistics that are specifically for that organization. It becomes a lot harder to ignore that risk, and it also makes the solution that we present a lot more compelling as a result. Again, goes back to that idea of urgency. One of the major sort of trends that we try to tap into is the amount of dark web data that's out there and how that's being used against our clients. A lot of our partners are saying that their clients are reporting much more sophisticated and much more frequent phishing attacks. The content of them is becoming a lot more personalized. They're becoming a lot more bespoke, and the dark web is a large reason behind that. The amount of data that's out there is essentially gold dust for attackers. If they know what services your clients sign up for, what information they've signed up with, things like invoicing dates or security questions, passwords, those are all the kind of things that attackers try to take and utilize. So if you can provide breach reports, it helps to provide context to our clients to explain why they're experiencing the trends that they are experiencing, and therefore the solution that we can provide off the back of it. What we also have is purpose-built human risk reports. Now, these are designed as more in-depth reports that cover a few different bases, and those are designed to deliver more comprehensive proof. Again, it's all about gathering data. So we'll look at breach data, we'll run a phishing simulation, we'll combine those, and we'll give overall risk metrics. Quite often when it comes to cybersecurity, it's quite hard to know where you sit. People know that people failing phishing simulations isn't a good thing, but what's the standard benchmark? What do other companies look like? Providing human risk reports where we can gather that data, but also benchmark them against their peers, is a really good way, again, to build that urgency and relevance for your clients. A lot of people don't realize if they're falling behind. To a lot of your clients, the processes that they have in place are just the standard norm. If we can use data to highlight that maybe they've fallen a little bit behind, maybe there are more proactive approaches we can take to help their staff members, again, we'll have a more compelling pitch and a more willing audience. So how can you grow your pipeline with usecure? So here we have a 3-step process where we take those tools that I've just touched on, and we have a nice digestible workflow to roll them out. One thing that is worth really taking note of is that, yes, this process works brilliantly, and it can be a fantastic way to guide someone through the journey of understanding their current risk and how they should remediate that. At the same time, you will have some prospects who are a little bit further along. Maybe they have already got an understanding that their staff members are in need of more stringent programs. They just haven't found the right program for them. So when we look at these different steps, it's really important to have the flexibility to consider each individual prospect's own current situation, their current knowledge around this, and then tailor it accordingly. We have seen some partners lose momentum because they go through a more vigorous process than they need to, when in reality, the prospect might be at a stage where they know they need a solution. They just need to understand that the way in which our solution works is the right one for them. In which case, a free trial is what we need, rather than doing the earlier steps where we're building the business case. So again, as we go through this, it's worth just keeping that in mind. Have this ideal process laid out, have it mapped out, have it repeatable, but also adjust based on the client's own current situation. So firstly, what we want to do is get that sign up widget set up. If we can then capture people on your landing page on your website, people who get sent your email campaigns, it gives them a clearer route to start their journey and gather that data set. So what we then do is we can convert those prospects and trigger a dark web breach report. All we need is their company domain. We can then build a report that's bespoke to them that highlights what breach data is out there on them as an organization. This takes around 15 seconds to do as an MSP. There's a little toggle, a little button in your admin console, and the report gets created pretty much instantly. It's a really easy, quick way when we have a client who's shown that initial hook to get them data as soon as possible. When we think about urgency, when we think about momentum, we don't want to let this drag. They're in a mind space where they are currently thinking about human risk. Let's get some data across to them as soon as possible to build on that initial hook. What we can then do is validate that information with more detail. So if we've ran that initial dark web breach report, we can then build on it with the full human risk report. So the risk report will then prompt you to add that client's users, and we can then do individual user email breach reports. So we can understand whether their head of HR has been involved in data breaches and what information was exposed in those breaches, and then guide them on how that information could be used for malicious purposes. We will then suggest a spear phishing attack for you to run. It's all preloaded. You just need to verify you're happy with the content. And we can then send that phishing attack to your clients. Phishing is the headline threat. It's the one that will grab people's attention the most. It's also the thing that is most visible to your clients. Everybody experiences these attacks. So it makes sense in a safe environment to replicate them and see who, again, is most vulnerable and needs that help. We find the risk report is a really effective way to validate the business case, to essentially show your clients who maybe are a bit unsure about the scope of their risk, exactly who is most at risk and what remediation steps they can take. Now, once we've then validated the business case, we've built the data, we've shown the risk factors, and we've given them best practices on how to remediate. What we then want to do is enroll them either on a free trial, or if you've hooked them well enough, if we have that urgency and that buy-in, we can get them straight onto a fully billable tenant. Again, one of the benefits of our billing structure is that we can encourage them to try it. With the monthly billing, they can get enrolled, they can see how it goes, they can get initial responses, and ultimately, if we get the product set up according to best practices, if we get the automation in place, if we send them a compelling phishing attack, it will quickly just become part of their standard processes, and it won't really be a decision as to whether they use usecure or not. It just becomes part of their standard cybersecurity posture. If they still need a bit of a closer look, maybe they want to assess some of the content on our training program, maybe they're not quite ready to make a decision just yet. You have the option to switch them to a free trial before you get them onto a billable tenant. So this three-step process is designed to firstly give you data as soon as possible so that you can then build curiosity and build intrigue as to what else you can find. We then go on to step 2, where we can dig a bit deeper. We can build more insightful, deeper reports, where we do things like run phishing simulations. And we monitor the dark web and scan the dark web for individual user emails. That way we get a lot more tailored and a lot more specific. And then finally, the enrollment, where we can either get them set up on a free trial or go straight to billing. And again, with the flexibility to alter this flow depending on the stage that the client is in. So just to go through each of those in a little bit more detail. Setting up the widget is incredibly straightforward. It is adjustable. You can capture whatever information you want within those forms. We want to position this with non-technical jargon. We want to tap into the problem that we're trying to solve. We want to use messaging that helps to grab their attention. Free human risk assessments is a really good tagline. We want to transform that human risk into resilience. So it's taking the problem, it's making it non-technical, and it's giving them a route to improve that through resilience. Within the usecure platform, we have a huge library of different templates, different social media campaigns, different examples of what this widget and landing page could look like. The idea is we want to capture those leads that come to your website as efficiently as possible. You will get a link to this article as well after the session. What we then want to do is launch that instant domain scan report. We have that prospect's domain from the sign up. We can now essentially mimic some of the processes that attackers follow, and we can create a domain scan report. Again, this is free, it's fast, it takes about 10 seconds to enter the information, and you'll then get a report that will highlight exactly what information we can find on that domain. It uncovers credential leaks, it uncovers signals that attackers look for to tailor their attack. We spoke at the start about the fact that attacks are becoming more personalized, they're becoming a lot more tailored. This is exactly the type of information that attackers utilize that we want to mimic. And again, if we can build that story for our clients, it makes the whole journey become a lot more relevant and a lot easier to attach their own circumstances to what we're trying to do here. What this also does is it provides that instant hook. It gives you something to follow up on, something to get their feedback on, and something that we can then build upon as well. We then want to validate that initial scan, and we want to run a complete human risk report. Again, there is a guide. You will receive a link after this session on the step-by-step process of how to build this. But the idea is we want to generate that extra proof for clients who still are a bit on the fence, those that still don't quite understand or are a bit skeptical about the extent to which this applies to them. If we can add more context with the domain scan reports, if we can send a simulated phishing attack and report on individual user risk, we can then highlight the overall risk status of that organization specific to their current setup. What this does is it sets us up really nicely for the upsell, which is, okay, well, now that we know all this information is out there, now that we know these staff members are more vulnerable to phishing attacks, how do we remediate that risk? We need to send them consistent training. We should test them frequently with simulated phishing campaigns. We should monitor the dark web for fresh breaches, which give us new threat vectors. And we should send policy documentation so that people know what's expected of them and what processes they should follow. We're essentially setting ourselves up for the upsell to the full usecure program. And then if we still need that extra push, that extra motivation, we can then set them up with a free trial. Free trials are a great way if they want to get them to assess the content. If they're a little bit more particular about the training that they send their staff members, for example. Free trials are a great way for us to enroll them on a couple of courses and get their feedback. One of the issues that we find with this, which is important to be conscious of, is whilst it's a 2-week free trial, you don't need to use all of the 2 weeks. Momentum is incredibly important, particularly if we've done the prior data gathering steps. So if you do set up your clients with a trial, have a standard process. Again, at this stage, data really shouldn't be an issue. We've done the risk report. It's more about reinforcing that how we go about it is the right approach. So what a lot of our more successful partners do is they set up the trial, they immediately send their contact the phishing awareness course and maybe secure passwords. and they will then get us a follow-up call booked in for 3 days' time to get their feedback on it. That then allows us to keep that momentum. It means that we have the data still fresh from the prospecting, we have their experience with the training still fresh, we marry the two of them together, all of a sudden the long-term program becomes a lot more tangible, and the actual practical workflows of it become a lot simpler. So again, this is a formula which we know works. There's evidence behind it. We've done a lot of investigations to see what processes our fastest growing partners are following. That 3-step process, again, with the flexibility to jump a step depending on the prospect stage, it works. It's a very time efficient way to build a business case for your clients. If you adopt that process, you already see results in an increased lead flow by virtue of the widget. You can capture more interested prospects. We have shorter sales cycles because we have a set structure and we build momentum and urgency. And then we have higher conversion rates because we have data that justifies why they should act now. All of this, again, stems from the idea that we want to help our clients. We want to present risk. It's not about inflating their current situation. It's simply about shining a spotlight on where they currently sit. Once we have that informed information, we can then take informed steps to then, again, remediate that risk. So I will just hand back over to Hetty then to go over some next steps you can take.
Great. Thanks, Nihil. That was a really useful session. I hope that everybody who has joined today has got some really great information from that. So just for next steps, following today's session, we will be sending out an email. You'll get a recording of the webinar today, along with numerous links that Nihil's touched upon throughout the session. You'll get some launch guides, a free landing page kit, some marketing and sales resources as well, and a 3-step pipeline process so that you guys can start selling. And then just a couple of follow-ups too as well. If you're not already a usecure partner with us, feel free to take a moment right now on the screen to scan the QR code or take an image of the link below. You can use this link to schedule a demo with our team and grab a free usecure NFL license. If you are already a partner, then you can reach out to your usecure account manager for any further questions, anything else that you might need as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining today, and we hope you have a lovely day.
Thanks everyone.